Okay. Anyway.
All right, here we go. Hey, everybody, I'm Ben Yee, Democratic State Committeeman for the 66th Assembly District and Secretary of the Manhattan Democratic Party.
I'm Alyssa Stein. I'm a county committee member of the 66th Assembly District Part A. I'm secretary of that part. It's a first show of the new year.
Yes, Happy New Year.
Happy 2018.
We've got a lot to cover, so let's just dive right into it.
We do. The first thing that we want to talk about is the Rules Committee.
Yes.
County Committee at our biannual meeting last September decided that we're going to talk about the rules.
Yes.
That there was going to be a Rules Committee convened.
Quite right.
The Rules Committee met in December.
Sure did.
And we're all supposed to meet as a collective of the entire county committee in January.
Yes.
And so what's the deal with that?
So here's what's up. We agreed in 2017 to open up the rules for revision and amendment, and essentially, but the Rules Committee met, they assigned everybody on the Rules Committee a portion of the rules to review. I submitted a couple of suggestions. They're still taking suggestions, but they have asked for an extension of the Rules Committee period, which is pushing back the general meeting. So actually, we're very likely not to have a meeting of the full county committee in January, and mind you, this was already pushed back from late December.
Right.
So what I would say is, I assume this would be a longer process, or that it would
It's a
take
lot to go through. That
a
was
longer
a significant
time.
document, those rules.
Yes, I don't think this is necessarily bad. It's probably a good thing for a
It's so that
process.
people are paying attention and actually doing the work.
Exactly.
So let's put up on the board, if we could, the
Yeah.
address that people can send their
Yes.
rule suggestions to.
Well,
which
what
is-
I would say two things. One, if we don't see a county committee meeting within the next, say, 4 months, then people should start to get antsy and anxious that it might just be pushed
Okay,
back
we'll
forever.
stay on top of that.
Thusly, I highly recommend, if we are all committed to improvement of the democratic process and the Democratic Party, send in your rule suggestions, but also let the Rules Committee know that you would like them to conclude their work eventually, and please email them, Manhattan Dems Rules Committee and manhattandems@gmail.com, to let them know that you're very excited about this Rules Committee process, and you're still watching and waiting for a meeting of the county committee sometime before the middle of 2018 to actually vote on these
Great
things
idea.
and see a report.
Great idea. I sent a whole list of rule suggestions, and I got a very nice thank you,
Yeah.
which could have been from you,
No.
Oh.
That was from the Rules Committee chair, because I sent suggestions too, and I also got a thank you.
which was really nice. So there's somebody out there acknowledging and hopefully reading them.
Yes.
That's a good suggestion. We will stay on top of that.
Indeed.
And keep everybody posted about what we hear, but also make suggestions about what they can say and when.
Thumbs up.
So
Next topic.
first thing, checked
Oh.
off our list.
Yes.
Second thing, congratulations, Corey Johnson,
Congratulations, Corey!
Speaker of the City Council.
He is. So Corey Johnson is the City Council member for City Council District 3, which is essentially Chelsea and lower, like West Village, and basically down the west side of
But like
Manhattan.
heading up the west side.
And oh yeah, and
too.
it goes up to like
Yeah.
the
He's kind
30s
of
or
a
something.
Big, yeah, there's a kind of a.
It's a good chunk. A lot of the west side.
Right.
Anyway, fantastic guy who has now been elected Speaker of the City Council, and it overlaps with the 66th Assembly District, so we're all very happy to have one of our
That's so-
local folks in such a prestigious role.
Yeah.
And in another video, we'll talk more about what the Speaker does and what Councilmember Johnson's role and agenda are for 2018.
Right, and the kind of things that he has on tap.
Yes.
Because he's already talking about the things that he wants to tackle, and we're going to get into that.
But not today, because we have so much.
We have so much.
Speaking of local stuff, like our local representatives in 66 Part A, I hear that there are elections for the Village Independent Democrats coming up, one of our local clubs, and that maybe you're thinking about running for something? On
Or
the
something for the executive committee.
Ah,
So,
what's that about?
in fact, it was exactly a year ago to this Thursday's meeting that I went to my first ever Democratic Club meeting.
Congratulations, getting
I know.
involved. That's
All
how
the
it
things
is.
that
A
have
whole
happened
year,
in
look
this,
at that.
right, a year, but all the things that have happened in this year are pretty mind-boggling.
Mm.
But local Democratic clubs are powerful entities.
They are.
They are where local issues are addressed. It's a great place to bring up initiatives if you have for your neighborhood, for local politics, for bigger things, to put together committees, to work with local elected officials. So it's been a really great experience to be a part of this local Democratic club. They are having their annual elections on Thursday.
Fantastic.
They already had elections for their president and their vice president, I believe. This is for the executive committee. It's 15 people. I've heard that more than 15 people are running, which is great.
Democracy
that
at
more than 15
work.
people want to be involved. So if you're watching this and you're a member of VID, please come out next Thursday and vote. It's really important at every level to be heard, to make a stand, and make sure that your vote counts.
Absolutely.
So thank you for the shout out, and to all of you out there, come. it's a great way to get your feet wet, to be involved, and find out what other paths you might want to participate in or take in the local democratic field.
Good stuff.
Okay, so now we're moving on to another local topic, which is the MTA.
Yeah, this is big.
So the MTA is huge. The MTA is a mess. Things seem to break down almost every day. And I know that Cuomo has talked about the problems and how to perhaps solve them, and the mayor has talked about the problems and how to perhaps solve them. And I'm sure that our new city council head speaker is going to have this as a major issue as well, because this is something that affects so many
One should hope.
members. One should
Although,
hope.
to be fair, the MTA is a state authority, and while it does derive some money from New York City, it's actually under the dominance of the state government.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is a little sticky too. But an article came out recently about
Yes.
the MTA that you're going to share with people.
Yes, I highly recommend checking this out. It's pretty long, but very thorough. It talks about why the MTA is such an expensive undertaking. They basically do a comparison of how much it costs to build track around the world. The MTA East Side Access Project has a cost per mile of about $3.5 billion.
I saw that. That
which is
blew my
nuts.
mind. Crazy.
Especially when you consider the fact that the average cost to lay track for a subway system all over planet Earth is somewhere south of $500,000.
What?
Yes.
Why?
Great question.
It's-
And there's a long article about this, but the long and short of it really is that the MTA is hiring significantly more people to work on every project. There's about 4 times the number of employees, all of which have their own contracts with the essentially consultants. So the way the MTA does business, apparently, is the MTA does not directly hire. They do have the power to do this on a project by project basis, but instead they essentially bid out contracts, and the contractors, which do the construction,
Right.
are then tasked with negotiating the labor arrangements, which includes how many people work on the project, what they do, what roles exist, and how much they're paid.
So the MTA does not get its hands dirty actually doing the work. They just are hiring people to go out and make the work happen.
Well, they do the design. They do
Right.
that. And they
But
come
not
up
the
with
actual
specifications.
construction and labor and
Correct.
stuff. Okay.
So a lot, but there's one step. There's even one more layer of ridiculousness, which is in New York, one of the ways that contractors get paid or their profit is determined is they get a percentage of the overall contract. So there's actually in some cases an incentive for them to inflate numbers. And a great way to inflate numbers is to overburden the budget, the labor budget. And then the MTA gets stuck paying. Now there's a lot of things that we should be doing to fix the MTA. One of them happens to be just funding it properly. Yes, we might be overpaying, but we also starve it of resources.
And you mentioned this before.
Yes.
That Cuomo is diverting funds that should be sent to the MTA into other places. So even if
Absolutely.
we just kind of got the money back that we're supposed to have for the MTA, that could help offset these ridiculously spiraling out of control prices because they're hiring too many people to do a job.
Indeed, and the other thing that we really should be doing, I believe I've mentioned on a previous video, the lockbox legislation.
Right.
And the lockbox legislation is not just setting aside money, it essentially requires the governor every time there's a fund diversion to issue an impact statement. But what this really says is nobody is looking at how the money is spent
Okay, so
for the MTA.
Here's my question.
Yeah.
Oversight. Where is there's no oversight. There's no
Absolutely minimal, there's absolutely minimal oversight. And so another thing that we were talking before we started shooting is the L train shut down, the diversion of traffic so that 14th Street becomes a bus thoroughfare, 13th Street becomes basically a bike thoroughfare,
a two-way
two-lane.
bike lane.
Which we were speculating could only work in reality if you took out all the parking.
Right, you couldn't have any parked cars on the street.
Which again would divert traffic and divert parking.
Which becomes, being somebody who lives in the village, my block would become this major traffic thoroughfare if everything is shunted off of 14th Street. Where are people going to go? And you can't really go north of the park because of Union Square.
When you take out an entire train line, it really changes the
It's havoc.
entire transportation ecosystem
Right.
of the city.
And I'll say that this has been an issue now for well over a year.
Yes.
And that there have been studies done, the MTA has done studies, the neighborhood has done studies, local politicians have done studies. This too, lots of jobs have been created to make very pretty PowerPoints and logos and designing kind of proclamations about things. I don't know if all of that is necessary, but another way that I'm seeing a tremendous amount of money spent.
Yes.
Meetings held, spaces rented, speakers coming, panels, interviews and questionnaires and surveys, like all this stuff that is taking a lot of money and time and energy. They still haven't come up with a viable solution that's not pissing somebody off.
Right.
But
well,
again,
you'll always piss somebody
You'll
off.
always piss somebody off. And this is a really challenging thing. The L train is closing for 18 months completely, so no trains will be running. So it's going to have a really major impact on this neighborhood. And what happened last was that the MTA came out with a proposal that was not what they had told local officials that they would be doing. So there's a brouhaha about that, but there's another subway situation where much money has been spent and things haven't been managed particularly well, where you would think, hey, just find some reliable, reasonable people to stay on top of these projects and keep them from spiraling out of control the way that they seem to be.
Well, my actual final thought on this whole thing would really be that regardless of whether or not New York's infrastructure costs or building costs are much higher than building costs around the world, the maintenance costs aren't that much more out of proportion. It's really the laying track and the tunnel boring and what have you. And the reason the L line is shutting down is because we don't take care of what we have, which leads to massive building projects and infrastructure projects because we simply fail to maintain things. And this is a result of constantly shuffling money away from the MTA. So we can be mad and say the MTA deserves no more money because the building costs are so high, but really this is what we might say penny wise, pound foolish. We need to maintain our infrastructure. That saves money in the long run. And we have to stop shunting money from MTA to feed pet projects of, I don't even know, legislators and other politicians. And there's no oversight. The lockbox bill passed unanimously, as I had mentioned before, in 2013, I think it was, or 2011. But it was vetoed by the governor and nobody thought to override it. As a result, we can basically say our state representatives are not standing up for mass transit and the needs of New Yorkers. It's absolutely ridiculous. There's no oversight. Nobody's looking at these things. It took a New York Times expose after decades of this happening. Anyway, I'm actually kind of pissed about this.
The truth of the matter,
I don't know if that comes across.
And we're going a little bit over, but the truth of the matter is that because this is legislated at a state level, most of the state doesn't give a shit about New York City public transit. And so while it affects millions of people here, we're not the constituents of people on Long Island and people out of state and people in Western New York.
Well, Long Island actually gets LIRR and Westchester gets Metro North, so they do get some funds. They do get stuff.
But the subway is a separate thing. The subway is specifically for New York City, and so the fact that it's under the jurisdiction of a state province, then us, ourselves, is ridiculous in its own right.
Yes.
So I can see like the layers of bureaucracy make it even more challenging because there are a lot of people involved who make decisions about the MTA who are directly impacted.
It's
and so
true.
why is it the top of their to-do list? They don't care.
Similarly with New York City housing regulation. But a topic for another time.
And education as well.
Yes.
In New York City public schools.
That is also a huge morass. We'll deal with it
On that
all
note,
in the new year.
On that note.
Thanks for watching.
See you soon.
Laters.